We are still waiting to find out what kind of reaction Iran is going to have to having the political leader of Hamas assassinated in the heart of Tehran in the middle of a presidential inauguration period. That what happened with the certainly was the Israelis, what they have done there, what they had done previously by attacking an Iranian embassy in Syria. That it appears that Iran has reached its limit and that it is going to do something. By all accounts, information that I've got from some sources that have access, that claim access anyway, to the Iranian side. Certainly lots of U.S. intelligence assets have been claiming that the decision's already made. We're just waiting to find out exactly what's going to happen. It could have come at any time. It still hasn't. So we're going to continue to look at what may happen. And we have MIT Professor Ted Postol back with us today. I know a big fan favorite here, many on Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Because he's these great presentations that he has and can put things in simple language that regular people can understand. And Professor, really great to have you back on today. And I'm looking forward to our discussion here so we can see, have some kind of an idea of what may be coming and what the Israeli defenses may be able to do. Welcome back to the show.
Well, nice to be back here.
And so we're going to get into that in just a second, because I know you have that one of your great slide decks here that can, explain to us what's going on here. But I just want, first of all, your impression of, how realistic do you think these claims are that Iran will do something by them trying to find a way to not respond? And even can they, do you think?
Well, I have to say I'm baffled by the whole situation. My friend and colleague Chaz Freeman had some very interesting things to say on Dialogue Works, just I think today or yesterday, and it's a bizarre situation where it's obvious that the Israelis want a war. It seems pretty clear that the Iranians would like to avoid a war, but are being put into a position where it's extremely difficult for them to not respond. And I really don't see how any response the Iranians come up with will result in a war not occurring, because it's very clear that the Israelis want it, and any pretext that they can come up with.
I think we just have to be honest. And even if you're a big fan of Israel, and if you're a fan of Netanyahu, it's hard to come to any other rational conclusion in that the assassination of Hania, the political lead for Hamas, who was in Tehran, who was the lead negotiator for the attempt to get a ceasefire that was apparently primary American policy objective as well, that they assassinated them in such a bolsterous way, as in addition to assassinating Hezbollah leaders in Beirut, that they wanted to prompt something. It's hard to imagine that they thought that would lead to anything positive for them. So I think when you look at the situation, it seems pretty likely that they're trying to prompt a response.
Well, what I find very disturbing, I'll speak now as not a citizen of the world, but as an American citizen, is I find it very disturbing that President Biden hasn't just called up Netanyahu and said, look, you get no more materials from us, period. You're starting something that's going to have an adverse effect for almost everybody in the world. And we are not going to be co-belligerents in this. But the United States is a co-belligerent as long as we keep providing weapons to the Israelis under conditions like this. It's really no different than starting a war, directly, at least in terms of supporting this conduct. And quite frankly, it's not unlike what Mr. Biden did with regard to the lead up of the Ukrainian war.
Yeah. And Professor, if I can just kind of bolster what you just said there, if anybody has any doubts about what the United States is prepared to do now, Gary, if you could play the second Kirby that you showed me a second ago here. This is what former Admiral John Kirby said just a couple of days ago about what we're prepared to do.
On April 13th, when Iran launched 300 missiles and drones, the United States had aircraft fighter planes in the air to knock them down. We've now added additional naval and air assets to the region to help defend Israel again. I think we've proven time and time again that we're going to support Israel.
Yeah, and I just got to ask, why do we need to prove anything, much less time and time again, if it's against our own national interest? That's the really bizarre part.
Well, I'm at a loss to explain this. I'm just despaired over the U.S. government's conduct here. I'm also despaired that no one has resigned openly from the State Department. These people get up there and speak on behalf of the administration. They can't say they're guilt free because they somehow work for the administration. They have to say this stuff. They can resign. I mean, this is so serious. It's like being a general officer and being asked to do something that you know is not in the interest of your country. You just resign. It seems to me you can't say you can say I won't. You can't say you won't do it, but you just resign. This is why I have a very low regard for Colin Powell. I mean, he was asked to do things, and from my point of view, he showed that he lacked integrity. This lying at the UN that he did over the weapons of mass destruction. He knew exactly what he was doing. I mean, he's a general officer. If you get to any level of military officer, you know very quickly whether the intelligence you're getting is suspect or not. And the intelligence that this guy put forward like it was real was just a joke.
Yeah,
And
hard to argue with that.
yeah, so we're seeing a breakdown across the board in the U.S. government of anybody showing any level of personal integrity. It's it's very, very unfortunate. I just don't know what else to say about it.
It's Gary showing on there. There have been a couple like this State Department official here, but unfortunately, she was pretty low level, and it didn't seem to have much of an effect on anybody above her. But and that's always been the problem. Is a lot of these
good
people
for her that she did.
Exactly.
I mean, at least the
it is. But the problem is that it's always these lower level, mid ranking people, not the higher level ones. They keep playing the party line, as we're going to see here in a second. So now we've had you on in the past, and shortly after the April of this year, when Iran launched 350 drones and missiles, et cetera, against Israel, and we've talked about the Iron Dome and how that can work and how it didn't, et cetera. Now then, we're going to take a look and kind of shift gears into what may be coming next. And there's been a couple of interesting comments here recently. One by an Army general, a retired General Votel, who says he thinks that actually Iran, the IDF, the Israelis, that they have to learn some lessons from last time. Watch him first.
We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Iran has studied what happened back in April, and they're going to look for ways to overcome some of the vulnerabilities that were exposed on their part during that, and they're going to look for ways to be more effective.
Now, you're going to show some slides here shortly, but I just wonder if just kind of categorically, if you can, do you think that, do you agree with the general that Israel has something to learn, and maybe they will be able to learn from what happened last time?
Well, they weren't very challenged last time. They knew what was coming and when. And one of the problems you have with aircraft that are intercepting is they do have limited time on station. Now, I know that the Western allies, certainly the United States, had airborne warning and control aircraft up, and those have some considerable endurance, especially if you have them being refueled on station. But this timing waves of attacks could really stress the endurance of these aircraft. Now they do have the ability to refuel in flight, and quite honestly, I'm not I don't know enough about their capabilities in this area to come up with a a good assessment about how this might play out. But my assumption is that the Iranians, certainly they understand what capabilities the U.S. and Western governments have for maintaining aircraft on station.
Yeah,
And
and and we had actually General. Sorry to interrupt there. We have General Jack Keane was on a couple of days ago, and I have some issues with many of the things he says, and we'll get to that shortly. But one of the things he talked about, kind of along the lines of what you're discussing now, is the likelihood that that Iran may come in with multiple waves
yes,
of a strike. Now, watch this, and then we'll talk about it on the backside.
It likely may come in 2 waves as opposed to what we saw the last time. And the Iranians, they've got to rethink what they did back on April the 13th, because the drones that they launched gave 4 to 5 hours early warning, given the distance it takes to travel to get to Israel. And the United States, Britain, France, and Jordan all had their fighters up waiting to receive those drones, and destroyed almost all of them. And it certainly gave early warning to the missiles that were about to come as well, and gave the Israeli air defense systems, plenty of time to get set for that. And on top of that, 50% of the missiles that Iran fired malfunctioned. So certainly they have got to correct the mistakes they've made, and I think they're going to try to present a greater challenge to the Israelis, I would imagine, as a result of this.
Now, we can quibble about some of his comments about what Iran intended to do, and was it a mistake that they took all that time, et cetera. But here's a bigger issue that I think that bears some consideration, because you're mentioning the loiter time of the U.S. aircraft coming off of the aircraft carriers, et cetera. Now, if Iran did learn anything, if they do know the likely capacity of those aircraft, there is an issue with them being able to stay up in the air. So if they launch one, and when I say wave, I don't mean like a literal one wave, because there was multiple waves the first time that Iran did this, but in terms of cycles, like, a few waves here, and then here it comes in, but then there's a second series of waves that come later. If the U.S. Air Force gets up and they have the same kind of engagement here, and now then they're starting to run low on fuel, they're going to have to go back, and then here comes another series of waves, and we may not be in the air to knock them down. I wonder if you can talk about the vulnerabilities of whether it's the U.S. or the Israeli systems, to multiple waves like that.
Well, quite honestly, I don't have a detailed enough understanding of how much gap filling can be achieved through airborne refueling. But it can't be a lot, because it takes time to refuel each airplane. And if you need 50 or 100 airplanes on station, you're going to have quite a few, refueling aircraft up there. And one way to start a wave, again, I haven't thought this through in detail or studied it, is to launch the slower Shahed drones, which carry a bomb that so you can't ignore them, because even though they're slow, they carry a bomb. So you're going to have to engage them, and they may take 5 hours, but a cruise missile may take, I don't know, 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and you send all the Shaheds up 5 hours in advance, and you time the launch of the cruise missiles, which are much more problematic, so that they all catch up with each other roughly over Jordan. And now you have an extremely intense beehive of different kinds of targets, which you're going to have to direct and manage from an AWACS for the the jet fighters to intercept. And again, I'm not really versed in the operational art of these airborne control systems, but it strikes me as a very daunting task to get this all coordinated. And the cruise missiles are really going to be an extraordinarily serious problem because, as I'll show in some of my slides, we know that the cruise missiles have a very high precision accuracy capability. So the if the intent is to attack specific assets, then the problem will be that the cruise missiles actually will be a real problem because they can actually recognize and home in on their targets. And I'll explain that in my briefing.
Now that's you're talking. So that's if things are just coming from Iran, and that's two waves, but really cycled into timed out to be one. What happens in one of two cases? One is if Iran has two separate waves of those, so that one strikes and requires all the countermeasures that you've talked about with our aircraft, with the Iron Dome, et cetera. And then another one comes by before they've had a chance possibly to reload or refuel in the case of the aircraft. That's one scenario. Then what happens if the second scenario, which is much more complicated, but what I would definitely do if it was me that was involved with this, is then there would be a subsequent volley coming in from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, to launch some of their allegedly 150,000 missiles as well. Can the Israeli system total, to including us, handle that many targets?
Well, no. I mean, first of all, discussing air defenses against ballistic missiles is nonsense. There are no air defenses that the Israelis have against ballistic missiles. I mean, I'll show a video that maybe was an actual intercept of a ballistic missile. I actually think it might have been a breakup, but I can't determine. But there's no evidence that air defenses that can play any role at all in dealing with the ballistic missiles that come in. Zero, for all practical purposes. And now the ballistic missiles are not as accurate as the cruise missiles. So if you have specific targets in mind, you'll want to go after them with cruise missiles because those can be very, very accurate, as of course can the slower drones, the Shaheeds. But there with the Shaheeds, maybe a terminal defense of some kind can be more helpful because they come in slowly. But it's going to be a roll of the dice for both sides on this. But my bet is there's going to be significant damage achieved by the Iranians if they put the kind of effort in that I'm guessing they're going to do. Now, the Hezbollah attack can do real damage because those rockets are not very they're not very accurate. But if you're firing enough, some of these rockets have 200, 300, 400-pound warheads on them. The longer range, higher diameter rockets like the Fajr 3 and 5, and if they have a lot of these, we don't know. At least I don't know. But if they have a lot of these larger ballistic missiles, which is quite likely the case, they don't have to smuggle them into Gaza like the Hezbollah has to do. They can do quite a lot of damage. A bunch of couple of 100-pound warheads coming into buildings will cause severe damage, and in some cases cause buildings to collapse. So
do you have any sense of whether we're talking about? I think it's called the sling or the David's arrow, something to that effect. In addition to the Iron Dome itself and all the Allied air power that may be coming in, how many interceptor missiles might they have, and what is the risk that they could run out of interceptor missiles from an Iranian or Hezbollah attack? Does the Iranians and Hezbollah have enough missiles to exhaust their interceptor missile rate?
Well, I think the number of interceptors they're going to have is certainly going to run out. They don't have thousands of interceptors, that's pretty sure, and there could be thousands of rockets coming in, and it will be impossible, for practical reasons, to determine which of these rockets coming in are carrying heavy warheads and which are carrying light ones. The shorter range missiles will be carrying lighter warheads because they're lighter rockets. But they're going to do a lot of damage if there are enough of them. The really short range missiles generally do what I would call, I mean, I don't want to sound crass about this, nuisance damage. If you get into your safe room, the Israelis have a lot of protection built into their whole society. Every home is supposed to have a safe room that is reinforced, or big buildings have corridors which are reinforced, or stairwells, and the people are supposed to go into those areas to protect themselves from being injured or killed from the effects of rockets that happen to hit their buildings. And that will save a lot of lives. No doubt it's a good thing to save lives. So, but if you have enough of these large missiles falling, though, there's going to be a lot of general damage. And if it's true that Hezbollah has thousands of these things and they're willing to use them, which it seems to me, if not in this case, I don't know what case they would be willing to use them in.
Right.
The Israelis could suffer quite a bit of damage. And I think it's not even out of the question, if the numbers are as big as some people are claiming, that the damage from Hezbollah could be larger than what is achieved by the Iranian piece of the attack.
Yeah. So now I know you have a slide deck here. I wonder if you can get into that to demonstrate some of the things you're talking about.
Well, I certainly can. Gary, are you ready to try to put up slide 3 for a moment here? This is just a slide. It's just a routine slide of the different rockets that we have seen out of Gaza. And the far right one is a rocket called the Fajr 5. It has basically a 200-pound warhead. A 200-pound warhead is, it's not a blockbuster, but it's significant. And if it comes through the roof of your house, it'll destroy your whole house and detonates. And there are probably rockets that deliver larger payloads that Hezbollah can bring to bear. And certainly if you have hundreds or thousands of these Fajr 5s being launched, they're going to do significant damage. The shorter range missiles are, if they hit your home and you're in your safe room, you'll survive, although there'll be significant damage. But the larger rockets with the 100 and 200 kilogram unitary warheads will be a problem if there are enough of them. They will cause significant general damage. So the next problem that the Israelis are going to have are the explosives from the incoming ballistic missiles. And if you go to slide 4, I just talk a few about the incoming ballistic missiles are going to have warheads in the 500 to 1,000 pound range, and they're very close to the same in their effects. I'll show you. Actually, if you go to slide number 7, this shows you the blast overpressure versus range for a 500 pound and a 1,000 pound bomb, explosive bomb, and the 500 pound bomb will cause about 5 pounds per square inch of blast at about 100 feet or roughly 30 meters range, and the 1,000 pound will extend to a larger range, but to about 40 or 45 meters. It's, in fact, you should be more concerned about a larger number of 500 pound bombs than 1,000 pound bombs. This is one of the reasons why I found it disturbing that Biden said he wasn't sending 2,000 pound bombs to the Israelis because of what they were doing in Gaza, but he was continuing to send these lower weight bombs. You can do much more damage with a cluster of 500-pound bombs than with a 2,000-pound bomb. The 2,000-pound bomb is very good if you have an extremely hardened military target and you really want to take it out. That's why you want a 2,000-pound bomb. If you want to do general damage to knock down buildings, which is what was going on in Gaza, 500-pound bombs and 1,000-pound bombs are more than enough. They just will hardly make a difference. So it was incredibly ignorant or incredibly cynical to suggest to people that they were somehow limiting the capacity to kill people in Gaza by limiting 2,000-pound bombs. I was beside myself when he brought that up as an indication of trying to impose constraint on the Israelis, and this is the real problem. The problem is the United States will impose no constraints on this government, this Israeli government, in spite of the fact it's hell-bent on murdering as many people as it possibly can. And it's just that simple. And any statement by anybody who claims to be a policymaker in the White House that's not sending 2,000-pound bombs is in any way an indication that you're restraining the Israelis. It just shows abysmal ignorance of the weapons that they're sending, or actual lying. And I'm afraid I believe both is the case.
Yeah, it's so ironic that even though it was only the one category, Benjamin Netanyahu publicly came out and blasted Biden until he apparently gave in to do that. And then you saw in America, many people were blasting Biden for how dare you withhold anything at all from the Israeli side, not even knowing what you just mentioned, that the 500 or 1,000-pound bombs probably much more effective in terms of the terrain there inside the Gaza Strip. But even that marginal limitation met with immediate pushback until apparently he gave in.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, he is not what I would call a good leader in this. He's been a terrible leader in this, but we know that. So if you show slide 5, Gary, this is just a slide of an explosion of a 500-pound bomb. Actually, it's a German bomb from World War II that was exploded in 2017 in an open field, disposed of. And you can see that in the lower right corner, the third sequence from the photo, you can see that the dust cloud, debris cloud, extends for anywhere to 150 to 200 feet. And that's not quite, the blast over pressure at that range is not quite 2 or 3 pounds per square inch, but it's enough to knock down a wood frame house. If it were a concrete and steel building, you could take the building down potentially if you hit in the center of the building and penetrated into the building, and the bomb exploded with a delay fuse. We saw this in Ministry of Education building was destroyed in Riyadh by a Scud warhead that was about 500 pounds. Iraqi Scud warhead that was about 500 pounds that just simply went through the roof of the building, which was a large concrete and steel building, and it just took the building down. So a 500-pound bomb is nothing to laugh at. So these are significant areas of damage. Let me just give you a sense, since the accuracy of a ballistic missile is hard to achieve. It's hard to achieve high accuracies with these ballistic missiles. There are systems that claim higher accuracy, but I think in the case of the Iranians, I would be extremely surprised if their ballistic missiles come close to 100-meter accuracy. I know their claims to the contrary, but we'll see. I mean, this is one of the things we'll learn from these engagements. But if we look at slide 14, I just put together something that most Americans will be familiar with. This is a satellite image of the Capitol building, which is in the center, slightly to the left, and to the right of it is the Library of Congress, and you see a little red square to the right and lower part of the from the Library of Congress, which is a target I'll look at as a potential target for a ballistic missile attack. And in the next slide, slide 15, I show the an assumed accuracy of what's called 100 meters. Now, let me explain what this 100-meter accuracy means. It simply means that if I draw that circle around the target, half of the warheads I shoot at the target with 100-meter accuracy, CEP, will land within that circle. The other half will land outside the circle. So the 100-meter CEP, it doesn't mean everything's going to land within 100 meters. If we go to the next slide, I show you what's called a Monte Carlo experiment. I just took the computer and I picked random numbers and I arranged the random numbers so they would land in a circular area of plus or minus 100 meters with a CEP of 100 meters. And you see a significant number of dots are outside the 100-meter CEP. Now, if I go to slide 17, the next slide, I remind you that the range of lethality of a 500-pound bomb is about 30 meters, or a 1,000-pound bomb might be 40 or 45 meters. So in the next slide, 18, I show you the areas of damage that would be created by a 5 psi blast from the 500-pound bombs. So you can see there's a lot of general damage done by these bombs, and one of them or two of them actually hit the target, but there's no guarantee that they would hit the target even with 100-meter accuracy. And so because I'm guessing, I could be wrong, and we'll see. We'll probably see that the Iranian ballistic missiles are unlikely to have an accuracy much beyond 100 meters. In fact, I'd be amazed if it's more than 300 or 400 meters, but we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be hard to do damage to very specific targets with these missiles. Now, do general damage for sure, and so we can expect those ballistic missiles to do damage. Now, one of the things we know we saw in the last attack was that the great majority of ballistic missiles were early generation ballistic missiles that basically tumbled at high altitude and broke up as they re-entered the atmosphere. And I found a video clip that was pretty useful. And here, this shows a warhead arriving, an explosion. There's another warhead. You see these warheads arriving. They're in real time now. So we'll go to slow time next. Now, if I slow it down, you'll see this warhead coming. It's going to go over. There's a house. There's a structure. And we see it coming down. It goes through the house, over the house, and lands behind the house. And we see the flash from the explosion. Now, in the next sequence, it's the same sequence. We're going to see from the upper left a warhead coming in slowly, and it's going to all of a sudden get bright, and you leave a trail behind it, and it gets very bright. Now, I think that could be an intercept. It's possible, but I'm not sure. But notice that you have another warhead coming in, and it's very stable and coming in quite fast. That's a modern ballistic missile. behind it, you see up is an old ballistic missile, and it's breaking up and it's moving very slowly because it's tumbling, and we're going to see it all of a sudden break up shortly. But another modern ballistic missile is coming by fast because it's not breaking up. It's on a stable trajectory, and we see now you see the breakup of the old one at high altitude, and it no longer becomes visible because it's going too slowly to be incandescent. But you saw this this other missile hit the ground and a detonation from it. And so basically in this sequence, you saw 4 ballistic missiles come in. This is in real time again. And this was basically 3 or 4 of them were modern, and one of them or 2 of them were old breakups. And if we go, finally, we'll see what it looked like in the beginning. You see all these missiles, those are all old missiles. You see the trails behind them, they're breaking up. And so it looks like the old missiles came in first, and then the more modern missiles were sent in second. But there's essentially no evidence of anything being done by the missile defenses against the ballistic.
Is that because they didn't engage, especially the ones being shown on that video right there? Is that because they weren't engaged by the Iron Dome or whatever other systems they may have used, or that they just missed?
There's evidence in some other videos of Iron Domes being launched, but you don't see anything that suggests there was a hit anywhere. The one possible hit I showed was the situation where there was a sudden breakup of what looked like a stable ballistic missile coming in. But my guess is it was some kind of failure. That's my guess. But it's hard.
And so, do you have a sense of what? And you may not have enough information to even make a guess on this one. What percentage of the Iranian missiles might be of the higher quality ones, as opposed to the lower ones that may again break up at the 50% rate, if that was true?
I have no idea,
Yeah.
But based on what I saw, which of course is a very small amount, it might be only 10 or 15% or less were modern missiles. I think they probably withheld most of the modern missiles. So if they have a large number of modern missiles, it could be a different story this time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and one would imagine they wouldn't get rid of their best stuff on the first shots, especially if they were intending them to be shot down.
There's not a lot of reason for that because they were shooting at this airfield. They knew that they didn't want to hit civilians. That was an objective. And they want to just put a few warheads on the airfield. And it's not worth a large number of missiles because the odds of hitting something really important on the airfield are low because you don't know exactly where things are, at least aircraft parked there. And you also, you don't have the kind of precision to hit a hardened piece of the airfield that's highly protected for reasons of function, like a fueling depot that's been hardened against the direct attack. So, it makes sense that you would use only a small number of these more modern ballistic missiles just to put a few on the airfield so that it's clear you could hit
let me
it.
ask you another question. I may be getting my conversations confused. If I am, let me know. But as I recall from one of our previous shows on there, when we were talking about the April 13th attack, you said it appeared that many of the missiles, if not all of them, were fired at targets that they knew that the Israelis would be watching for, that they had were defended. But what if they're well, I'm sorry, back up a quick. Does Israel have enough air defense systems and Iron Dome and other interceptors to cover everything, or are there parts of Israel that don't have the coverage that Iran could target and not even have to worry about interceptions?
Well, in principle, they can use their air defenses against any of these ballistic missiles, but in practice, the chances of them actually intercepting, given that they fired on an incoming ballistic missile, are very low for all the systems. We can't say exactly how low they are for the David sling, but we know how damage is done by the interceptors, and the interceptors must, I want to underscore, they must hit the warhead of the incoming missile if they are going to stop it from doing damage. They must hit the front end. And the likelihood that they could hit the front end, even if their systems are working as claimed, is very low. So these missiles will, the warheads on these missiles, even if they happen to be hit, will just tumble to the ground and detonate. We saw this in the Gulf War of 1991. So the air defenses used against ballistic missiles are in effect useless. They really have no capability for defense. It's all systems that were built with American money so that the Israelis could make believe that they can defend their populations against ballistic missiles. It's just a dog and pony show.
Yeah. So I
So,
guess we're about to find out how real that is, and then we'll.
well,
I guess it really depends upon how aggressive the Iranian slash Hezbollah or even also the Houthis decide to be in this operation. I've heard some analysts earlier today suggest that one of the reasons why there hasn't been any attacks so far is because they're continuing to do coordination and preparation, which would imply a bigger attack, and so it could get really ugly.
well, if there's a massive use of ballistic missiles, it will not be possible to tell whether or not defenses were engaged. Let me put it that way. There will be the effects will have the defenses will have such a little effect on the scale and destructive capability of the attack. It will essentially be totally controlled by the properties of the incoming ballistic missiles. The defenses will make really no measurable difference. It's just that simple. There are not enough interceptors, and the interceptors cannot reliably intercept these rockets or the warhead, or more importantly, the warheads on them. It's just not going to matter. Now, where it could matter is if they reserve the use of, for example, Iron Domes for cruise missiles and things, because the Iron Dome should be able to shoot down a cruise missile. So if I were using Iron Domes in Israel, and my guess is this is what they'll do, is you'll reserve them for use against cruise missiles that are coming in, because you can see them. They're moving fast, but they're not moving so fast that they're impossible to hit.
Yeah.
If you hit a cruise missile, you're going to break it up. And the warhead's going to land somewhere, but it's not going to land on its intended target.
Yeah.
And so that'll help you. Let me just show you what we know because we do have data on the Iranian attack on the Abqaiq oil fields. And we know that. So let's go to slide 27. Now, this is demonstrated accuracy. That's why I underscore that. It's demonstrated accuracy of Iran's cruise missiles. And gee whiz, I can't believe I did this. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, if we go to slide 28, I had images of the cruise missile, and unfortunately, I didn't include them in my briefing in my rush. These are satellite images of the damage on the processing and storage tanks at Abqaiq from these cruise missiles. Notice that the tanks all seem to be hit at exactly the same location. So if you look at slide 29, this is an image. Slide 29 is another satellite image of undamaged tanks at the Abqaiq. It's a commercial satellite photograph, and on the right, I've just broke out one of the images, and I'm going to use this as a template. Let me explain what I mean by a template. I can have my hand, and I have 5 fingers here, and I can have an artificial image of my hand, and I can cross correlate them. In other words, I move one over the other. Now, so I have an image in my cruise missile, and I have the target in front of me on my camera, and I see the target, and I just keep moving until I get a coincidence. And this is called an autocorrelation. It's a well-known kind of procedure used in homing and signal processing of all kinds. If you look at slide 30, this is an autocorrelation I did of the template I had in the earlier slide with the image of the different of the different tanks. And now I take that autocorrelation in slide 31 and I overlap that on the tanks themselves. And you can see that there almost certainly was some kind of image processing involved, because the precision with which those tanks were hit was probably better than anything you can do with a GPS system. So what the Iranians demonstrated, as far as I can tell, is that they could use GPS or some external guidance system to get themselves to the right location. Once they're at the right location, they have a camera on the cruise missile. The cruise missile looks. They have an image to match against the camera, and they can hit with extremely high precision different objects. Now, if they start employing this technology against the Israelis and they have images of things they want to hit, which they should be able to have obtained, we could see some interesting outcomes. So I don't know that's going to occur, but I do think that's a real possibility.
Well, I guess we're going to find out here, because I just can't imagine too many more days passing without any kind of an action here. But all I can say is we appreciate you coming on today and showing us about this stuff, and we will almost certainly be calling you back again.
Yeah,
once this tech is.
I'm waiting for the data. And I'll bet you neither the Iranians nor the Israelis really know how this is going to work out.
I'm very confident of that.
They're both on uncharted territory.
Absolutely.
So,
I couldn't be any more strongly in agreement with you. No one does. The only thing I can say with a lot of confidence is that it's going to be ugly, and it's not going to be something that just is easily controlled.
And unfortunately, I say this again because I think it's important. The United States has been a co-belligerent in this process, and it's inexcusable. It's just inexcusable.
I totally agree. We could have stopped this a long time ago with our leverage that we have, but we have been unwilling to use it.
We have all these people who talk about the aggressiveness of Iran, which is a problem. Iran is a problem. But you have a country that has instigated a war, repeatedly tried to precipitate a war, and now they're going to get what they want. And it's going to be because of them, the Israelis, not because of Iran at this point. It's really unfortunate.
It is very unfortunate. I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks a lot, Professor, for coming on today. We always appreciate you, and we'll look forward to having you back on very soon to do a post-mortem analysis on whatever happens.
Okay, give me a little time. It's going to take time to do it, but
will do.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And we also thank you guys for joining with us today. We are unintimidated and uncompromised, folks. We're telling you the truth no matter what it is. And if it steps on some toes, I'm sorry about that, but this is the truth, and you deserve to know it. You can count on Daniel Davis Deep Dive to keep bringing it to you, and we will stay right on top of this issue as things continue to develop. Watch for our video channels here so you can get the breaking news whenever it does come. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.